to get going, Simon?
Yep.
All right. Calling the meeting to order. It is February 1st, 1 month down in 2023 already. Here we go. Any public comments today?
I have a quick something.
Okay.
VMN just put out a movie about Suckerbrook Hollow from Five Tree Hill to Suckerbrook,
Who did?
the Vermont Master
Oh,
Naturalist,
yeah.
and starring me.
Awesome. Congratulations.
So I don't know if anybody, I could send it along if anybody wants to look at it.
Yeah.
Who's your agent?
Oh, when you see it, you'll be like, oh, I see.
Well, is it up on their website?
It might be. It just came out yesterday.
Okay.
Very cool.
Put it on the town website.
Oh, that's a good
A
idea. Yeah,
place to connect.
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay. All right, awesome. What, any other? As you read those is on. Anyone else?
Nothing from
Okay.
me.
Okay, thanks, Reed. All right, then let's roll into the minutes of January 18th.
So in that second paragraph of the forest management, I think it's supposed to be ground on the second paragraph.
Okay.
Ground is frozen.
Grass is frozen. No,
Right,
forest
well,
too.
there is grass in the forest, I know. I thought about that.
You know,
I'm
when I
sure it
read
was
that, it
all
made
correct.
sense to me. I have no idea why.
Got AI, that decides what's right.
That's where spell check falls down.
Mhm.
In section 5, about the laser specific plan, and you guys can correct me if you heard it differently, but the last paragraph was kind of my comments about
Yeah.
about it and what I did not mean to sound unsure whether the specific plan could
Okay.
secure long-term operation. I meant to sound sure that it did not secure long-term operation.
Yeah.
And the last sentence was in the context of a normal permitting, growth management and permitting process
Right.
that nothing to do with the specific plan. So if there's an easy way to
I can amend that.
give that context, that'd be helpful. I'll move approval of the minutes as amended.
Second,
Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of approving the minutes from January 18th, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, there you go, Simon, thank you. All right, next up, habitat disturbance assessments engineering fee. So this one, I don't know, I can't remember if there's any, we don't have any material.
There's no real material for us. It was, so a couple of times just in passing, when we've been talking about other things, people have said it would be great if we got the HDAs, firstly earlier in the process, and secondly, if the town contracted them, so that the town was instructing the consultants to prepare them. I know the planning commission is thinking about, prior to doing the next town plan, which is when bigger issues would be taken forward, like some of the work you did with Jens, is looking to do like I think they call it a bylaw cleanup, where they look at sort of easy wins that are not going to be controversial with people, and see whether they could incorporate them. And this was, you know, changing this so that, you know, we get a sum of money from the applicant, and then we go out to get the HDA done was something that we thought maybe might be able to fall into that bylaw sweep up with a load of other things. So I also went to the Champlain Valley Regional Partnership meeting last week. And it was the first meeting of the year, and we were discussing things that that group might be interested in discussing. So I suggested that it would be good to find out how other people are dealing with this particular issue. I think they'd be more interested in like a wider discussion about how different municipalities, you know, have environmental assessments, what people are looking for, sort of what they find and what they secure. I'm finding these meetings quite helpful with understanding like how other towns operate. I think quite a few of them don't have as advanced regulations as we do on a number of things. So I think so like whatever you think the shortcomings are here, I think some other towns don't have as advanced regulations. So I thought it'd be useful, two things really, just to get, because we never really discussed it, it always comes up at sort of 8:55 a.m.
Usually from Eric.
Yeah.
What about that thing?
So I think what would be useful is just to like hear your thoughts on those two issues. Like, do you think that's something that would be beneficial, and why is it beneficial? And just any general feedback on how the HDAs are working. So you know, you're probably familiar with the regulations that we have for the strategic wildlife habitat areas, which is as things stand, there's basically two. There's a core habitat and wildlife connectivity corridors. So you're not allowed to encroach on those unless you fall within these exceptions. And the only one that really sort of comes up for the Conservation Commission, because everything else is either administrative for householders or, you know, energy, which is done by the state, is this documentation of no undue effect.
Yeah.
You can read that.
That's the other reason I have my computer, so I can read things.
So we get the
that last one.
A little subjective.
Well, that last one, yeah, the challenge is, I think that's where this came up, is that no undue adverse effect. There's potentially a little bit of or a lot of play in that piece, and if you're a person hired to do this assessment, and you're hired by the developer whose expectation is, I need your help getting this thing approved, there's the opportunity to be influenced to err on the side of saying there's no undue adverse effect, because the person you're working for is, that's the outcome that they're seeking. So I think it just takes, the town is, I think, in a less charged position. We're in sort of a neutral position of, we want landowners to be able to have the advantages of the land that they own. And we also want to preserve natural resources. So we have sort of a balanced position. So if we are the hirer, then I think it puts the biologist or whoever in a better position to be objective about that.
I agree. Thanks, Reed. That's exactly what I was thinking too. When I first brought this up, it's something that I thought we should discuss. It just seemed like it puts the consultant in our court instead of the developer's court. In my time with the Conservation Commission, which is whatever, I don't know, 13 or 14 years, I don't recall at one of these consultants ever coming back and saying, no, you should not develop something here.
Yeah.
It's not to
I
say
was
that,
gonna say that.
you know, that they are hiding anything, but it's just, you know.
There's never been anything.
Yes.
Nothing has seemed to rise to the level of saying, no, I don't think you should do something in this area of the property. If that was an area that was being proposed for development.
And I don't, maybe all of our habitat in town is just boring, I don't know, but it just seems like this one would be a better approach for the town to take. And I would suggest that, you know, I know we're talking about habitat disturbance assessments, but also apply this same principle to
I was thinking about
Delineations.
Wetlands, yeah.
delineations.
So are wetlands not checked by the state? Every time we've dealt with them, the engineers have, I mean, I can look into this, have come back to me and said, oh, we had to go out and meet Tina Heath. And she had to sign off on what we were doing.
But my guess is they don't like walk the whole property for that,
Right.
which would mean there is some,
Yeah.
I think it can't hurt. I mean, why not do it for wetlands too? You know, they pay for it. The money basically passes through to the town to, I don't see a problem with it.
I'm a lot less concerned about the wetlands delineations. I feel like I do see proposals having to be adjusted based on
It's
those.
not quite as
The wetlands, the
subjective
buffers.
as the
It's a
wild.
little bit more conditions on the ground, and it can depend on the time of year, what conditions are observed. So I think
Yeah,
that's maybe where there's more play in it is the season and what they actually can see. But they can look at species, they can look at the saturation of the soil and different things. So I've seen a lot more play, a lot more give by these proposals toward the delineations and no give with regard to the impact on the habitat.
I mean, there was one of the recent developments on Mountain View Road, I think at pre-app stage, they were coming in at 20 units. And that's what they got in growth management. Their TP was only for 14, because that's all they could fit on the site. Obviously, once the wetland delineation had been done.
In my head, I'm thinking about one that was down off of 2A on the right. You go past Sucker Brook, and there's that little jog in the road. And on the right, there was a proposal, and it was a long, narrow parcel. And in order to space the units out, they put one in like the back corner and one in the front corner. But it meant that the driveway cut through all that forest. And then they made a clearing for a house at the back. And it was preferable for the landowner or for the residents, I suppose, to have that space. But it was definitely a significantly different impact on the habitat. And it's situations like that where I would like to see more firmness to say, no, if you just look at that one parcel, you're only impacting a little bit. But if you think about all the different parcels that are against that, let's say, forest block, if all of them put a long driveway with a house at the end of it, you end up with no forest block. So I think that's where we have to be more firm, and this could help.
So what are some of the options for
Well, I think
companies?
a lot of what you've, for companies,
Companies, yeah.
well, I think if we do move forward with this, I think probably what we do is some sort of RFPs, like have either 2 or 3 consultancies who we just go to, you know, whether it's at pre-app stage or DP stage, and get them to do an assessment for us and send us the results.
Then would we send out each work item for them to bid on, or would we say we're gonna ask for a bid for a price that would
I think
apply
we-
across multiple?
I think we'd probably get to a stage where once you're on our sort of staple of consultants for, I don't know, 3 years or whatever it
Like
was.
rotate through them.
We'd either rotate through or we'd find out, the issue probably at the moment would be like who can actually do the work.
Look at-
Who's available to do it.
But I think that's good to just at least offer them
Yeah,
in an order and then say, if you can't do it in the given
Yeah.
time, we'll go to the next one.
Is that how other units of the town do it?
so I think public works are the only people I know who have this sort of review process. I think what I've seen is that they have an engineering firm that they use for this, a particular one, and it might be because generally speaking, it is engineers who submit this discretionary permit. So having and there's only so many of them, I think it's probably going to be conflicts arising there, as well as the environmental consultancies aren't generally submitting these applications. There's a couple like Trudell who have a biologist on staff, but most of them are separate.
It has his hand up.
I just had a quick question about whether or not we thought a procurement through the town would be a more lengthy process, and would developers find that process to be longer in duration than what they could do themselves. And I know some of those pre-apps are kind of proposed at their own pace, but the discretionary permits tend to have a different schedule on their own. And I like this idea very much. And so I'm sort of thinking about this as, would that be a potential barrier for implementation? Or do we think that we could have that procurement in place so that these assessments can be done in a timely fashion and not cause delays from the developer's point of view?
Yeah, David, that's definitely a legitimate concern. I think that's part of what we need to make sure we can work through in the process is having an adequate list of consultants to work through to ensure that we can get the reviews done or the assessments done. Sorry, I want to block the L. Within an appropriate time frame. I don't know what that time frame needs to be, if it's 30 days or 60 days or whatever, but if we do end up with a list of qualified firms, then that needs to be, something on their end too, is that if they agree to take a job, whatever it is, that they'll do the work within a certain time frame, so that we can keep the process moving forward and don't hold up the applications. And I can definitely see pushback coming from the larger firms, like Simon was just saying, Trudell and maybe a couple of others have their own biologists on staff. And so that's, that would be a potentially an increased cost for them. But we've also seen a lot of smaller, just people who own their own home and are trying to do this on their own, come in and work through navigate the pre-app and DP process. And, and Simon and Melinda before Simon had to do a lot of help them out through the process. And this could actually make it easier for them if it's one less thing that they have to do. Make the phone calls, find the consultants, figure it out what they need to do, what it is they need to do, instead of, or where the alternative would be just write another check to the town and let the town handle it, and that could be to the town's satisfaction. So there's definitely pluses and minuses, I think, from the developer's perspective. But again, we're here, and I think from my mind, we're here to look at the best interest for the town as well.
Absolutely. I think that one of the ways that you could navigate that is to have that list be 2 or 3 contractors, with a contract in place that's just ready to sign on a per project basis, depending on availability. And so that's why I would strongly suggest that we have that list be 2 or 3 firms that we're comfortable with, and to have those sort of contracts pre-negotiated all in advance, so that, you know, when it's asked for, we can get someone out to do it quickly.
Yeah.
I kind of remember when we were talking about this, about getting that done earlier in the process than it had been being done, because this was kind of being left to the end. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh dear, you know, oh, we've got these plans, and all of a sudden you're telling me there's this significant wildlife habitat area. You know, you've just really thrown a wrench in my whole operation. So to move that up, to say that should be like one of the first things to be done instead of at the tail end.
That's a good point. You know, if you sit in on these pre-app meetings, they've got drawings, they've got their whole site kind of developed. And then the DRB says, okay, this looks good. Do the wildlife, do the traffic, you know, and come back to us in discretionary. But I completely agree, is that honestly, it seems more like a pre-app requirement, like in order to be considered, because so much of that plan is drawn out and sort of conceptualized in that pre-app process.
Yeah.
And it costs them more money, the developer, to redo everything, you know, after the fact. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to think more about those like small, just a landowner trying to make a plan for their property. And at first I was thinking this would make it harder for them than it would for somebody who's used to doing development regularly, because maybe this is more work up front. And maybe they're more likely to drop out after pre-app than somebody who is a developer as a profession. But then thinking about it more, I think it is, there might be landowners like that who wouldn't go on to discretionary permit and all the work and all the DRB hearing and stuff that's related to that, if they knew at pre-app that there were some constraints they weren't aware of initially. It might help them avoid extra work or really have a much more mature proposal by the time they do pre-app. So I think on the whole, I think I was trying to make sure it's not that is a just rule for all the different types of applicants we have. And I think it would in some ways be a little bit more work at pre-app, but in other ways be a significant benefit to just landowners who are trying to make a plan.
So when, just a quick question. When is like appropriate times of year to do these surveys where you would feel comfortable that what people have assessed is an accurate representation?
I think I would ask that of the consultancies,
Yeah, the
and say,
consultant.
I want to know from you what you know, when can you see the best? When can you make the most accurate determinations?
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, because you got migrating what birds and wildlife, and if it's, you know, certain species that you're concerned about, then maybe you pick them up at one time of year, not the other. Yeah, it's
Some of the
really interesting
games.
answer.
Tracking in the wintertime, so wintertime you
Right.
think may not be good, but yet you can see, get a good assessment of
For
some.
deer yards. or-
Yeah, some of the wildlife.
Yeah, like you'd never go out and see coyotes out here behind our place, but in the wintertime, you see the tracks right next to the house. Like, oh yeah, they're here.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
you don't know those things without the snow. So somebody like Jens might be able to also give us like a quick email to him, just saying, do you have any suggestions about when
even
they're most effective?
The wildlife group at UVM might have, because they did a fair bit of the making layers for GIS for wildlife in the past, so they might
Yeah.
have some ideas.
So where I'm coming from is this, like, one thing, a pattern I've noticed is that late November and December is when we get the residential pre-apps, because everyone's wants to hit growth management in the next year. If you don't get in by December, you've got to wait a whole other year.
Okay.
So if we get something late October, because, you know, someone said to an engineer, oh, I want to subdivide my land, and the engineer said, well, you're in Williston, you've got to get on with this. You know, what, like, if we go out in November and we said, someone, please go out and look at this, you know, it might be a case that it's a two-stage thing. It might be someone goes out and says, well, you know, this is what I saw. I'm pretty sure these are going to be the impacts, and, you know, we're talking about, you know, alternative site design, but we should have another visit in May or whenever.
Yeah, sometimes they can make assessments based on topography and tree species and undergrowth species, you know, that this is a likely area where you would have, you know, traffic of wildlife through or habitat for nesting or whatever. That's the way they do some of it. It's, you know, it's just likely it looks that this should be preserved because it's a unique habitat for that.
Yeah.
And
If I were a beaver.
yeah, I mean, a lot of that they can do year round, but, you know, I agree that it's a tricky thing, but it's also maybe a lot to expect is if we say, okay, well, we have that initial assessment, but we won't know for sure until we look at it in April or May or whatever.
I do think that to try.
To make it a multi-step thing, it gets it even more complicated.
It does. It would certainly be, give us a lot more confidence in the assessment, but
Yeah,
is the gain greater than the?
yeah, I think maybe
cost?
the initial assessment is these overlays we have of important wildlife areas. That's what usually brings it to our attention is we see, well, there's a swath across there that's been identified as possible wildlife habitat areas. So that's kind of initially, okay, we know it has the potential. Now go out and, you know, the wildlife biologists can assess that, yes, that is in fact correct. And I think it's great that we're putting to, not our advantage, but it could be a more objective look at it if it's not paid for by the developer. I think that's great.
So is there a way to move it into the,
Yeah, I mean,
Timeframe?
we could change, because at the moment it just says prior to discretionary permit.
so that way it would at least let someone know, a developer or a landowner, that this needs to be done at this point, not waiting till we've already gone to the, you know, engineering firm and gotten plans written up and, you
Yeah,
know,
like you
save
said,
them
Jerry,
money.
it saves some time because
Time
they
and
know
money.
about it in advance.
It can. Do we know what roughly what the cost would be to for like a per
It
acre
probably
basis?
depends on the size of the site, but maybe $1,000 to $1,500.
I mean, I remember years ago it was about $500,
Right.
Yeah.
but that was probably 10 years ago. But you're right, so
No, it's probably not worth the administration to set up the job and everything for $500.
So that, you know, it might be something.
yeah, now it's
uh,
higher, I'm sure.
Like take Blazers for an example, or Hirschwood. You know, by the time people knew about it, they had spent a lot of money. I mean, for those plans, I mean, that must cost some money to
Sure.
hire someone, have them draw up plans, you know, as the process keeps going, the cost to the developer landowner is going up. So if that could be in the beginning, in that pre-app stage.
And that's actually one of the counter arguments I've heard to doing that is it's one more thing that the developer, whether it's a big development or a small development, has to pay for at the pre-app stage. You know, if it's the pre-app is to determine if this project is really going to move forward or not. And I don't know, I mean, I agree 100% that I think it should be at the pre-app stage. That's just one of the counter arguments. It's another thing that the developer.
Yeah, and I don't even know yet whether it's gonna
Yeah,
fly.
it could
Yeah.
save them though, thousands,
could.
is on the other hand. So you're right, there's two sides to it.
Realistically, how many projects fail at pre-app?
It's not zero, but I feel like it's not far from zero.
Yeah.
So the projects that fail at pre-app actually fail before pre-app because people come in and they talk to staff and staff that say there's no way this is going to work. So one of the reasons you see like pre-apps going through and discretionary permits going through is because all the junk has already been filtered out.
And at that stage, you would say, okay, we'll get a habitat assessment.
Well, we probably include it on our checklist.
Yeah.
To include.
Gary mentioned like seeing the overlays, but they already get that at pre-app, right? In the staff report for pre-app,
Yeah, so
we comment on
we
some of
do
that.
sort of show the overlays and how they're affected. For the wildlife habitat area and every conservation area. So they are briefed on that.
So there would be some where you could say a habitat assessment is not needed.
Oh,
Yeah, you
well,
could.
where I was going is maybe the compromise is to say it's still a discretionary permit because they can at least see the overlays at pre-application, but it is paid through the town. That would be a compromise that doesn't move it to pre-app, but does make it potentially more independent.
Right. If we said something like, these are the areas that the Conservation Commission is concerned about with how you've shown your siting and where it's positioned. At discretionary permit stage, you're going to pay for the town to do
Yeah,
an
and things may
HDA.
have to be adjusted.
And the
Yeah.
HDA is going to,
Mhm.
come to us and we're going to use it to inform our recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a different stance, even though it doesn't move it earlier in the process.
Right, because they've got it more in the back of their mind that,
The town's gonna do an assessment
Yeah.
basically with the assistance of a consultant.
So we've got a couple minutes left. How do we want to, do we need to, I guess we don't need to necessarily wrap this up today.
I was just interested in what you thought about it, and what you think the shortcomings are and how you think it can be made better. There's some good discussion points there. They're really helpful.
Would that be going into the town plan? Or is that-
No, it would just be, it would be a tweak to the bylaw.
So that's something that, if we get that far, then select board approves the tweak to the bylaw? Is that-
Yeah, so it would
Planning
be
commission
part
first.
of like a package of other things
Mhm.
unrelated to conservation areas
Okay.
that they're looking at.
It would go to the planning commission who would
Yeah.
add it to their list that
Yeah.
goes to the select board.
Okay. So do you need more from us to?
No, I
do
think
that?
that's good enough for me to think about at the moment.
Okay.
Start writing some things.
Do you want to share that back with us, Simon, before you bring it to the potential select board review?
Can do, yeah.
Yeah, probably the next step is to look at some draft language and see how it would work, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Is that something you think you can knock out before the next meeting?
Yeah.
All right, so maybe we can get that on the next agenda and then check this off the
Yeah.
list. That's as much as we can anyway.
Oh, look at our timing.
Yeah. All right. What would I have next here? Vermont DEC watershed grants.
You want me to summarize that, Simon, or do you want?
So we've got like a few ideas, because I know Chapin and Reed have also been thinking about this. So the last meeting we did talk about with Dave and Gary about looking at potential trail linkages. And I think the idea was that we've got this official map now, and we've got a whole load of easements that we've secured over the history of the Conservation Commission from whenever it was instituted. And are there any small linkages that we can do that will be really beneficial to people? I think Dave, Gary and I looked at some potential examples. I think Dave had one in particular. And we talked through what we could do. So just as an example, so hopefully this is clear.
As mud.
My GIS skills are developing. So the red is built printed trails or bike paths. The orange is easements that we have, and then this green rather line up here is an access road that the town has to a pump station. So this was one of the ideas that was had about whether we could look at doing a scope of works involved linking up Talcott Road with this potential easement through Brown Woods HOA and maybe onto the access road. There's a couple of others. So
I'm trying to get myself oriented. Can you just help me with the landmarks there?
so this is Allenbrook School.
Okay, all right.
Oh, there's the sir.
So along the, so behind
So this is I
Seth,
can't remember the names of them.
Seth Circle.
I think Seth is in
is
In
it
here?
Seth? Okay. Seth
this
Circle.
is-
I think that little loop is Indian Brook.
Yeah,
Okay, it's Indian Brook there.
and then over here is one of the streets.
Got it. Okay, so it's running behind Indian Brook along,
Yeah.
along Allen
Yeah,
Brook.
so
and
if Talcott Road, you're looking at the pool at Indian Brook,
Mhm.
the Allen Brook is a couple dozen meters from that pool. And so this easement is on the right side, the eastward, or I guess northward side of the river.
Okay. And the current crossing there that's depicted, that's a proposed crossing, is that right? The
orange.
the orange that crosses Allen Brook there,
There's
I think
nothing
this
there
is-
now. Yeah.
I think this is
it's just north of that, next to the green
right
line.
there.
You were
Yeah.
talking about this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a proposed crossing, not an actual, just an
Yeah,
easement.
it's an easement
Okay.
to cross Allenbrook.
It's definitely hard to get from Ellenbrook School over to Taft Corners because you have to go on the roadside. If you want, the sidewalk doesn't even go, I think, continue. I guess there is a little sidewalk that crosses at the entrance to Indian. Okay.
Yeah, one of the thoughts that we were having with Gary and Simon as we were looking at the map was, for the purposes of this or future grants, the educational opportunities of having a riparian public access point so close to an elementary school that has a lot of opportunities for taking kids outside, and their curriculum is heavily focused on outside activities. This could be a really, really excellent way to expand that those educational walks into the riparian zone. And we thought that might be appealing for purposes of the grant. But as we began talking about that as the opportunity, there's a lot of other things that would sort of need to happen in order to get that final connection point. And so bringing it back to the commission this morning was kind of like, are we on the right track? Is this the kind of thing that we would want to recommend either now or in the future? I think you've got an easement opportunity connecting the two ends of Talcott right next to the school, for trail building, but then making that final connection up to the access road and the Brennan Woods HOA, that could potentially be a more complicated story that we'd have to, in all likelihood, get back to, because I think the timing on this was pretty quick.
Yeah. So
Jacob has his hand up.
Sorry, I'm not a practice with doing that.
And so I think that the bottom line is what, I think the way we settled, Dave and Simon and I, was, it seemed like there were too many moving parts now still to completing this one. And we had a couple other in mind as well. And that we hated to work on a grant, get it all done, and then find out that one of these things that needs to be achieved dies or can't happen. And then we don't have a project. So we kind of thought that if we came back to you guys and as a group, we identify one or two, maybe three linkages that are close to being done that could have a lot of potential to be completed, that we move forward in some of those obstacles first and then get farther along in the process. And then these grants come along every year. Simon, is that?
Yeah, so these grants are every year.
Yeah,
There are loads of other grants that seem
Right.
to pop up all the time. And I get the impression from reading it that these guys want some sort of certainty that if they give us the money, it will be delivered this year.
yeah.
So I thought about, is a better way to go about this to figure out the project, and then when a grant comes along, we've got a project that's ready to go, because it feels like a lot of these projects are pretty wide ranging. Like you can sort of, as long as it's somehow related to a watershed, you can make it fit the grant requirements. And we did look at, maybe rolling in with a couple of other potential linkages that I think Gary was keen on, just, looking at, can we ever develop this hurricane?
Yeah, there's a
Lane
Hurricane
linkage.
Lane thing that had,
Before we get too far down that path, Chapin, did you have a question or a comment on the Ellenbrook site?
Yes, and I wasn't aware you were looking at this, and I support trails, but I spent a lot of time in the area you're talking about, and the topology is very difficult, including that you would be in the floodplain most of the time. There is a trail that was done with some grant money, I think with the Four Winds Nature Institute money about 10 years ago, that made a trail. They call it the Ellenbrook Discovery Trail, that goes from Ellenbrook School down to the brook. And we do use that for Four Winds excursions to the brook frequently. I also wanted to point out that where there appears to be a break from the Talcott Road going east to Southridge, you see where I'm talking about? There appears to be a break in the trails. That's just because that's town land, and so there's no need for an easement. So on the planning that I've done for Tree Island, I have included a connecting that path through basically behind to Southridge, behind the fire station.
here?
Yeah.
Yes. So those two yellow lines, actually, everything in between is town land, so they could be connected. The issue there is that there's a lot of, the grade is very steep. And so when I proposed maybe having a walk along that was halfway up it, it would need a lot of work to stabilize the soils. But again, the topology is an issue to me throughout this whole area, except for the Southridge piece. The Southridge piece would be easy to do. Anyway, those are just comments. It's not neither here nor there about what you're doing, but I've been thinking about this idea for several years and trying to picture how we could get through there.
So I think that's great, Chip. That, in my mind, helps support these ideas we've had of, let's try to see if these things can happen successfully before we start writing grants for them, because, maybe things are so steep, we can't put something through certain areas.
Yep.
So I think that adds to what we were thinking.
Okay. So Hurricane Lane is the next one.
Well, yeah, that was one that we were, there were two other ones. One, let's see, I guess this is the Hurricane Lane connection that could get us all the way down, and because this is a dirt road, I believe, here, so.
Yeah.
And that would get us into the system that could go to
Oh, the Boulder Creek.
Pond and back over to Five Tree Hill and stuff. And then the other one was this connection, let's see. Go down, was the connection here from Five Tree Hill, making these two connections that we've always talked about. We've got these easements years ago, and that'd be great to complete that, just to, to allow people from this area to get over to Five Tree Hill and take
Nice.
advantage of that. And then, of course, then they enter and can go both ways.
So, sorry, I was trying to follow. So what's the part to the southeast?
The L.
The L there. Is that Ishams?
No, Ishams is way down here. So this is, remember we walked up on that hill
Yeah.
a year or two ago? That's in here somewhere, and
Oh, yeah.
it's
yeah.
off this road somehow. I think I've actually walked through there several times, and it's not bad. It's doable with a little bit of cutting a small trail through there. And I think it'd be great to, Because I know people over here that use it already, but it'd be nice to formalize that.
That's right. I remember
So
that.
that's kind of three possibilities that if you guys agree, we could spend a little time figuring out how doable they
Figuring out
are.
them, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever happened with Hurricane Lane and all those road bike trails and
Can you go back to Hurricane Lane? I just wanted to make a comment. Let's see, so these two lots are owned by sugar makers. And I had a chat with them when a graduate student at UVM wanted to look at these easements. And they have a big private sign here. They were actually, it's doable, but they were, they said that they felt like their arms had been twisted by the town when they wanted to buy those lots for sugaring. And they felt they were forced into making those easements. And they were also upset about the town not plowing their Bradley Lane. So they kind of put up a big private sign in, and it's theirs. But
Which is illegal.
it is
Yeah,
illegal,
yeah.
but I'm not gonna,
Yeah, well, I think that's another concern. We need to go in there and figure out, we could change the location if it made it
I
easier for
think changing the
them.
locations would make it
Because
easier.
that's
for
what we
them.
always write those easements. It has to be agreed upon location between the town and the
Right, right.
landowner. So that it minimizes impacts for everybody.
Right, when I was talking to Bernie, he said maybe changing the location because that easement runs right in front of their house.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be on their property, but it can,
Right.
I think we often move things around. Yeah, it could be behind their house or.
Well, there is Bradley Lane, right, runs all the way down to here.
Sure.
So it
And,
could go across anywhere
Yeah.
if they wanted to change the route
yeah,
to avoid impacts to their.
and also Hope Yandel's land is here and she's never gonna develop that. And I think her family's open to trails too.
Yeah, they have been in the past.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's three properties there. Which two are you talking about? Is it the two that have the yellow line across the
yeah,
bottom?
these two.
Okay, and what's the next one down?
This one?
Do we know anything about that one?
where the cursor is right now.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, that's the link that we don't have.
I don't know about that one. I know somebody just bought this piece from the Yandels and he bought it to hunt on.
Yeah, because there's also a possibility that we don't even need the easement on the north side of the property line, if the property owner on the south side is willing to agree to an easement for the town for a permanent trail just along that border.
It's amazing the trails that are already back there.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like
They're always
every
like that.
forest, right? There are
Yeah.
trails.
Usually it's pretty hard to get an easement through property
Yeah.
unless there's some development or some
Right,
subdividing or something going on,
Yeah.
so.
Now,
that-
were these?
Unless we buy it, but you guys remember, I remember I brought this up in a meeting the other night for the glacier thing is. We have the ability, I believe, to use ERF money to buy
Easement.
trail easements. Okay, because they were all saying, oh, I don't think we can do that. I said, no, I'm pretty sure. And we,
Yeah.
at one point, we even set $1, like $7 a foot or
Yeah.
something like that. But that could be altered.
yeah. I'm just saying that one might be a little harder to deal with
Yeah.
because we'd have to change
That's
the
a
easements.
great example again, that where we've got to go through these hoops before we start
Right.
saying, yes, we
Right.
want to do this.
So
What's
we've got,
behind the easement? I mean, what is so these easements were retained somehow, right?
Right, when they bought the
Subdivision.
land,
And did they want to develop it? Is that how the town got the easement?
Well,
Yeah.
sometimes it's just subdivision, like they want to subdivide,
Yeah.
Might have been
two
one
20-acre
side.
lots
Oh,
and
right.
in
So
order,
they-
and we say, well, that's an area that we have a planned primitive path system and that would be great if we could get that. And they often, we agree upon the conditions of those, putting them on the ground.
Never, not really exactly where it's gonna go.
Yeah,
but just-
occasionally, I think there's a couple and maybe they may be gone by now that get sunsetted, like if you don't use that easement
Okay.
in 20 years, then it goes back to the landowner and they don't have to. There's one up on that Blueberry Hill there, I think,
huh, interesting.
on,
so, all right, so we've got 5 minutes left in this topic. What, we have to get the application into DEC by
the 9th or
February
something.
8th, I think.
February 8th.
Yeah,
It sounds like David and Gary, you guys are saying, we think there's an opportunity, but it may be not be this year's application. It may be next year's application with some pre-work between now and then.
yeah, I think that's it. Don't you think, Dave and Simon? I mean, but we would wanna, we don't wanna then relax about it. I think the key is we wanna say, are these the three things we wanna consider? And let's actively try to work through the obstacles so that we can
Yeah.
really be ready to say, okay, we've got all the permissions, we just need, you know, $3,000 or $5,000 to put a trail in.
I
So
think we also need to
that's-
unpack that grant and just make sure that the parcels that we're contemplating are eligible or relevant to what the purpose of the grant is set up for.
Yep. And that's, well, I was just gonna point out, looking at the grant program, that's one of the subcategories of that is for planning, assessment, inventory and monitoring for up to $3,500. So
I suggest we could get a grant to do this planning.
that's kind of what I'm wondering, yeah, if there is, you know, if we could try putting just together a, you know, a kind of a generic package and see what happens. I don't know, I haven't looked at the actual application process, so I don't know what's involved there, but
It'd be like a landowner outreach, and trail planning, engineering, and
Yeah, we could. I guess I think there's kind of a level of planning before we're gonna really need money to do it, in my opinion. I think
okay.
if you guys think it's good, then, you know, maybe we could discuss what are the obstacles for each one, and then maybe Dave takes one and I take one, and we go out and try to figure out how to move forward beyond those obstacles first. And then, I don't know, what do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I want to wrap my head around what's actually required in this grant, but generally, I think that's right. Like, I don't know what the $3,500 for plan assessment and inventory could be, but it could be like what, you know, Chapin is identifying is having someone walk the property who actually knows what it would take to build a trail and say, is it reasonable? Is it feasible? Or are there floodplain constraints? Are there topographic constraints? Like that could actually be a useful lesson. I don't know if the grant would be sort of applicable for that, but I like that idea.
So it seems like that's not ready yet for this. grant.
Well, that was our take at the end.
Yeah, I
We'd
mean,
like to have your blessing to move forward on this, to say, you know, so that,
For next
I'll
year.
put my name down that as liking the latter two, the Hurricane Lane and the connection southeast of 5 Tree Hill. I think those two, to me,
butternut.
Yeah, the
seem
5 Tree Hill
the
one.
most likely and the most beneficial to explore.
I agree. I will say that making the first one with Allenbrook School could make that one a lot more competitive in the eyes of the grant reviewers. But if the other two are more feasible, then that's but also very important, obviously.
Yeah. So maybe this is a multi-step thing. Maybe the first step is to look at each one individually, literally write down all the obstacles. And then we can, as a small group, make an assessment. I don't think that's doable. Or, you know, this is a huge obstacle. Let's look at that first, and then maybe come back to you guys in a month or something, or in a relatively short period of time, and say, you know, we think we've got this one to this point. What do you think?
I think based on Simon's feedback, it's okay if this permit deadline comes and goes. We know that a year from now, this particular one will be back up, and in the meantime, other grant
Yeah, and there are
applications become
other
available.
grants, so I don't know, like, is the Hurricane Lane one in a watershed? I mean, nominally.
Everything's in a watershed.
Everything's in a watershed, but,
It would fall under more than like planning and recreation access sort of ballpark, but there are other grants that are more pertaining to that, so
yeah,
I don't think it's necessarily a problem. And regarding the Allen Brook area, Chapin and I have been talking and bouncing ideas around the work he's been doing with Tree Island, and one of the key things that also is not ready this year, but is likely ready next year, is to do a lot of work that is educational focused to enhance what's already there at the what do you call it, that the Discovery Trail?
Yeah, the Allenbrook Discovery Trail. And actually the thing that you're referring to is I would like to put an observation platform on that property. Because it's archaeologically sensitive, it wouldn't be anchored in the ground. It would be a floating platform, sort of like someone's deck, in order to have educational plaques that are similar to what we've done for the Allenbrook Trail area behind the Village Community Park. Both about the ecology, about the geology, and about the Native American artifacts that were found there and so forth. So in order to put those posts in without anchoring them in the ground, putting them onto a platform and having that platform be at the top actually of Tree Island, where you can see the Green Mountains and you can see all the things that we're talking about. So I'm probably next year going to be ready to propose funding for materials, and I think that we can get Eagle Scouts to do the construction.
So is it, so yeah, I think that's a great, I mean, that's such a great, I went with a walk with Chapin out there on Tree Island, and it was pretty incredible. It's got a lot of potential. Good for the kids.
There was one, Chapin, that was this year. Was
Yeah.
that the materials for better protecting riparian plantings?
Yeah, so I had communication with Tyler Brown at the state. He's the fur animal specialist at ANR. And the way that we've been trying to protect plantings there at Tree Island, where they're in the area that there were riparian plantings done in 2009 and 2011, the beavers have cleared out many of them. And there's one area where there's a significant erosion on that steep slope, and the Intervale Center, through their grant money, I gather, gave us 45 trees this past year and planted them. And then with Sustainable Williston volunteers, I've protected them from beavers, deer, and rabbits as best I could using cylinders of chicken wire. Those have proved fairly problematic. It really is an experiment. And in talking to Tyler Brown at the state, he said you really have to use animal fencing because beavers will push down chicken wire. And so Simon and I have priced out a little bit. The amount that we priced would cover 12 trees. And I think we want to be more in the $1,200 range for this year if we want to protect the trees that have been planted in that danger area. And I would reuse the chicken wire on other, just to protect from deer in other places.
So that's a potential option for this year, is to do some additional protection for riparian plantings at the Allenbrook by ABS.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at the grant criteria, or at least the examples that they're providing in this grant, I think that concept that Chapin just proposed probably could be more competitive than the rec trails.
Tank stabilization,
Yes.
restoration projects.
Yeah, the rec trails one, so the Forest Parks and Rec has their recreational trails program, grant program, which unfortunately that just closed last week, so we missed that one. But for next year, yeah, they opened it up this year. They opened it up in late November. They have a couple steps in that process, I guess, but so
That might be the.
but that's yeah, that's seems like it would align the concepts that we were just talking about around developing recreational trails. Seems like they would align with this Forest Parks and Rec grant program pretty nicely. The stream bank and tree planting, riparian tree planting project, that I think that could be competitive for this DEC watershed grant.
I think it would be a pretty simple write-up in that the trees have already been planted that we would be protecting, and we're just improving the protection of those plantings and then monitoring the results. So one of the things Chapin and I have been talking about is keeping data on what's been planted, what the survival rate was like, and which types of protection we're working. So there's a little bit of tracking, but mostly it's the materials to do better protection.
This application for this grant is very short. And there's only about half a dozen questions. They want less than 100 words in each response, and then ultimately a budget. And it sounds like it's all equipment and no labor, or I guess equipment and supplies. So
Yeah.
That
It'd
should
be
be-
pretty quick write-up if we want to support it.
Yeah.
So I have a question, since neither one of those projects are ready, is it too late to do the other topic that was suggested, the ERF fund?
I don't think we need funds for that one this year. But the stuff to protect the riparian plantings, I think that is actionable, well-defined. We know what materials we need, we know what we would do with them. We know what the benefit we're seeking is, and the trees have already been planted. So I think it would be a pretty quick write-up, and to Eric's point, I think it would be a good fit for what they're targeting with this grant.
But for this year, it's just.
No, for this year it's ready
Oh, this
to
year.
apply. Yeah,
Oh,
like in the next week to write up a quick
okay.
application.
Oh, good.
It's just whether the commission wants to move forward with that, supporting it.
I think it's a great idea.
Works for me.
I'd be happy to work with Simon on that. And the other thing is it's based on guidance from the state. We've tried one way, and the guidance from the state is to do another way.
And I can be a conservation commission contact, since I've already been talking with Chapin about this project.
Okay.
For finalizing that and getting it submitted.
I have
That's
a
a great
roll of,
idea.
a roll of fencing, Chapin, if you would like. to. It's been sitting, it's rolled up and behind the barn, and it would be perfect to cut up for, protection of the
yeah.
trees, yeah. It's
I-
not chicken wire, it's actually fencing with
I'd-
small blocks.
Yes, I'd love that. There are different areas on Tree Island where we're protecting more from rabbits and other things, and other areas where the deer are getting the tops. And then there's the areas where the beavers are a threat. And so we've been trying all different methods, and we've reused about 100 of those white plastic sleeves from the old riparian plantings. We've had donated chicken wire. Everything's been donated, including 163 trees, except for one roll of chicken wire that Simon helped me purchase last year for $155. And again, we can reuse that investment if we get this better fencing for the trees that are threatened by beavers.
There are some wonderful photos of kindergartners dragging dozens of these tubes out of the grass.
All right, well, that sounds like a good path forward. To me anyway. So I guess seems like everyone else is on board with it. David, does that work for you?
yeah, sounds great.
Okay,
I don't think we need a motion.
I don't think so either. And then, but let's keep that, the other concepts in mind. Maybe we can continue to work on them and have something ready to go for those forest parks and rec trails grants when they open up in November. It looks like, just a quick look, it looks like you have to submit a letter of interest by whatever their deadline is in November. And then if they like your idea, then they invite you to submit a more involved proposal.
So it's kind of like a pre-app. Yeah.
Well, I have to leave. Sorry, guys.
All right,
See you later.
thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay, next up, we have Jacob Krantz. Simon was gonna give us a refresher on this one.
I guess there's two reasons for this. This is not a project that I've really worked on. And secondly, I think the last time you guys looked at this was about 3 years ago in detail. And I know Nick Warner's coming in next in 2 weeks' time to give us a budget update, and hopefully we can talk about Jacob Krantz there as well. So I just wanted to check, we had, hold on, let me just. So as everyone probably knows, we got this parcel of land.
Zoom that up a little bit, make it bigger, yeah.
we got this parcel of land in 2018 for 29 acres behind Morgan Parkway and is that Stirrup Circle?
Oh, is that,
Yeah.
which one is that?
Yes.
Stirrup Circle?
So that's like across from the hardware store, East Hardware, or not East,
Yeah.
True Value.
Yeah.
Agway, whatever it is now.
Yeah,
True Value Highway.
Yeah.
And the Habitat for Humanity Restore and the
Car wash and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
the
Yeah.
veterinary clinic is the one I'm thinking of is
Oh, yeah.
most close across from Stirrup.
So we got this parcel, it's of high value, we sort of described, this is a paper that was done back in 2019. It's of high value for sort of recreation, I think there's already quite a few trails informally on it. But also its conservation value. I think it's one of the few parcels of land town has that actually touches or comes very close to the river. Or most of our land is I guess south of the interstate. So there was a sort of 3-year program set out to start mapping like setbacks, reach out to the permitting authorities, start figuring out a trail network and do some consultation. It's in an area of Williston, doesn't really have a lot of parks or open space. Most of what we have is like, I guess, south of the interstate for the primitive trails, and then we've got Allenbrook Central School, sort of in the village, and these guys have Rosenol Park. So it's quite good from that perspective, and it reaches an area of town that doesn't have a lot at the moment. And I know we talked a couple of meetings ago about with the additional growth at Taft Corners, do we need to start looking at additional parks? So I think we have this informal agreement with Winooski Valley that they'll develop it for us and run it for us. And there's sort of a list of everything we're sort of looking at doing. I think there's going to need to be a few trail structures constructed. And I know the big issue to date has been how to get access. So I think there was
could you blow that up a little bit?
yeah.
Thanks.
So the last we heard was Trinity Baptist Church, going to give us a trailhead here, and we're going to make use of an easement at the back of Bittersweet to get into the park that way. So we'll find out whether they're going to submit their discretionary permit in the next month or so to bag that improvement and when it might be delivered. There are alternative accesses. There's some up here which I don't necessarily think are particularly feasible, and I think were discounted early simply because they require a lot of buy-in from some of the residential communities up there.
Are there any easements on those?
So the town, I think, has a right of way coming down here up into here.
There's just not parking.
Yeah, there's no
North
parking. And it's introducing a lot of activity where people have to drive through quiet residential streets. I think I get the impression that was the feeling there. And I think it was thought that, well, this comes forward, it's going to be a new development. So you're going to know going in that there's this trailhead here.
It could be designed to be
Yeah.
better access for parking and stuff.
Parking, yeah.
But I think the other potential access that was looked at back at the start was coming through the Global Foundries site, seeing whether they'd be interested in helping us get access. So really, it was just, I don't think there was anything we particularly needed to talk about. It's more just make sure people think about it before Nick comes in. And if there's something we discussed that's not, well, that you discussed, that was 3 years ago, that's not obvious from looking at the file that you think's important, you let me know and I'll see if I can find it to make sure that we're all fully aware of the facts.
So I guess this all happened before I was on the board, but I do remember going on a walk with
Yeah.
Melinda.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was like, wow, this is really nice. And then, yeah, so the town has owned this for 5 years now, and it's just been sitting there. And it just I don't know, it just seems like the Trinity Baptist Avenue it's gonna be maybe another 5 years.
Yeah.
And this piece of parcel of land, which has multiple trails on it already, and is being used by all these neighborhoods, the town isn't able to use it because of access. So I'm just wondering if we should start looking into Bittersweet and the power line was mentioned in there that
Mhm.
could have been an access. I mean, just to,
Nick probably has the answers to this.
I think that's a good
I
question.
know, I know Chapin's hand is up, but my question was to what Terry, you just said you were there, like how are the existing access points being
Well,
utilized?
from other neighborhoods.
Yeah, so like, are people just walking through
There's
in
very
informal?
well-developed,
Yeah, off of roads, off of people's backyards, there's paths leading into it. Yeah.
And there was the one, I mean, it's not it wouldn't be hard that they build bridges as part of their business plan, but there is a bridge that needs to be built from Trinity Baptist. There was a big kind of a gully. So they threw a board across it and everybody navigated their way across for the walk. But yeah, so that would be one thing that I don't know if that would have to be done on the other potential accesses. I'm not sure.
Chapin?
Yes, I have been there dozens of times, and I usually park at the pumping station. I don't remember the name of that road that's directly opposite Habitat. So I go in right there by is it a Nazarene church or there's something there? And then straight in, and then there's a pumping station that's town land because it's a sewage pumping station. And there's room for 2 cars there. It's not supposed to be a parking area, but that's the access I use. However, from there, you wind up going across a place where there's a bridge that's a pedestrian bridge that's not safe. I just wanted you to know this is already getting used, not just from people like me and neighborhood people, but I'm taking a field trip of 7 Williston Central School students out there in 2 weeks. And I've had them studying the environmental resource inventory that was done in the past on this parcel. And so their topic actually is a sustainability topic. And they wanted to study the water quality of the Winooski River. And they wanted to find somewhere to go to the Winooski River that was town land. And so I had them study the resource inventory. We're going to look at the invasives. We're going to look at drainage and other things. But I just want to know that it is getting some use. And I think the biggest issue is where to park for people who aren't living near it. And I'm glad even if it's long-term, I'm glad if you invest effort in getting a trailhead.
So I've been looking at this area on Google Maps, and I don't recall all the conversations we had 3 years ago, but just looking at north of those 2 neighborhoods, between that northernmost neighborhood and the Green Mountain Power electrical station, there's a loop. You can just see it in here on the map, and I don't know who owns that cul-de-sac road or whatever it is, but I don't know, maybe that could be another option for
That little loop there.
just north of there. What is that? Parcel 150-000 in there. Yeah, that one.
Yeah. That's fun. Oh, okay. Yeah.
From one transco, okay, so that's,
V-Trans.
yeah.
Yeah, that should be easy.
I think it'd be hard to work with.
On the map, I was just gonna point out one thing, which is, we learned why there's this area thin owned along the edge there. That was because of needing to be able to flood it with the dam. So they had to purchase.
So it's IBM or
Yeah.
Global Foundries that owns that.
They own that because if they dam up the water, it will flood those areas. And so that's one thing you might not know, Simon, just from reading the old stuff, is that the reason there's almost no land touching it that's owned by the town is because of of the dam and their need to own the edges.
But the town would be able to access the river?
I think there is
We've got
actually
that.
one spot.
It looks like
Oh,
that,
okay.
just purely on the basis of this sort of rudimentary topo, it looks like.
But that
maybe that's
indicates
why
that
they
it's very
didn't get it.
steep.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would own it.
Oh.
So there's, I don't know on the, just,
Oh, yeah, I see. Okay.
yeah, just upstream, like at the very bottom right-hand corner of that. I think there's a spot where the town owns all the way up to the water, but again, anywhere it does, it's gonna be a steep spot.
Wasn't there, this is kind of going in the other direction there for Global Foundries. Didn't Global Foundries just have a piece of land for sale on the corner of Redmond Road and
Yeah,
Mountain View? So where is that in relation to?
That's
It might be
other
this.
side of the solar panels,
Well, near the solar panels, but where's Redmond Road?
right there.
that
I think it
one.
might be this,
Yeah.
is it this, this is
thought
not
so.
owned by the state
I
of
thought it was
Vermont.
on the other side, but. That's state of Vermont, yeah, on the other side of the road, of Redmond Road, yeah, right there. They were trying to sell that, I thought.
Chapin is that a new hand or an old hand? Okay,
Yeah. So I
So-
thought that was
sorry.
no
in
worries.
the paper that they were trying to look, Global Foundries wanted to sell that.
I like your idea, Eric, about that loop, because I'm
Yeah.
guessing it's basically empty all the time.
It
Right.
seems like it, and I don't see any activity on Google Earth. No, that's a real indicator, but it's, there's, I don't know, I guess it's worth bringing this up with Nick next time also.
It might be harder to negotiate, but if we feel like the Trinity Baptist access point is gonna be slow and unreliable, then it doesn't hurt to at least try.
And I agree, and it wouldn't hurt to have a second access point.
Right.
And
To
if both
spread
work
out
out, then
the-
great, yeah.
Mhm.
And then it reduces traffic from either end.
on that.
Reduces wear and tear on the access
Yeah.
path too, so.
Mhm.
But to your point, Terry, I hear you 100% on the fact that Trinity Baptist could be only 5 years, and just the reality of it is that's the time frame it takes, or whether it's Trinity Baptist, or even if we could somehow get, Global Foundries to give us a spot right on their property. That's about, 2 or 3 years minimum, probably
Oh,
to
right.
get
Yeah,
a
but-
parking
right.
lot and trailhead and all that stuff in
It just
place.
seems, and what is did Trinity Baptist withdraw their proposal?
So all this is like speculation at the moment, so
Oh,
just
okay.
leave it.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, we don't know what the
It's still in the
status is.
works. Yeah,
But
but it did seem, each time Nick talks about it, it just seems like there isn't a commitment there. And it's just hanging in the air, and it seems 5 years to own a piece of land and have only to have this small group of people in town to be able to access it. It's unfortunate, and it's.
Yeah.
It is,
Okay, so thanks Simon for that refresher. I think that's a good warm up for the conversation with Nick next week. So Nick is coming in, not just to talk about this, right? He's doing the whole
No, he's doing the budget.
overview.
I think he talked to the select board about what their activities are.
Yeah.
But I think we always spend a lot of time on Jacob grants.
And he may remember why we haven't explored that V-Trans loop as well, but that does seem like I think there's probably a couple of easements that would have to fall to come together to make that one work, but it might be easier than Trinity Baptist in the long run. Okay, so what else do we have on the agenda here? We're up
Just
to
other
on the
business.
updates, right? Or other business. So we have the letter from Brian Forrest. That was just circulated. That was something that Brian sent as a follow-up to our meeting last time. He just wanted to reiterate his point that he feels that the horses left the barn on research for Catamount, the research project for Catamount. We should just not cut down any more trees over there. I don't think there's any if someone wants to open that up for discussion, we're welcome to. We weren't really thinking we would, but
My only question was whether we should make sure to point out to him to read the minutes, because we did address after he had left that the trees that are harvested won't be going to incineration. So
That was my point as well. After reading the letter, was he signed off right when I think I asked that question of,
Mhm.
and there
What's
will be
happened?
no trees burned from that project.
Yeah. So Simon, maybe you can follow up with them. I don't know if you already wrote to him to thank him for submitting that letter, but.
Yeah.
You did. Opening for that. And then next we have, did anyone else have anything more on that letter from Brian Forrest? Jabin, I see, okay. Did you have something new, Jabin?
Yes, at the right time, just a miscellaneous item.
Okay, all right, let's hold on to that and we'll get through Simon's list here. Vermont Invasive Day Letter of Support Request.
So this was something that was talked about at the CVCP.
Which is the Champlain Valley.
Champlain Valley
Conservation
Partnership.
the regional group, okay.
At that group, we decided not to do anything because I think there was a feeling that this is more of a discussion group rather than a group that takes a position on something. So I think everyone's taken it to their conservation commissions or whether they brand it in their particular town. We didn't get this direct for whatever reason, I don't know why. But this is from someone who lives in Jericho. Basically, they just want to log in the state to have an invasive management day.
The week following,
Green update.
Green Up Day.
2 weeks. I think,
Yeah.
I think it's
Oh,
2 weeks after.
Yeah.
That would be kind of tough to get volunteers out 2 weekends in a row.
And plus, it's not good to treat.
Right.
Yeah, that was my only question was the time of year. It seemed like it'd be a better late fall, like a November
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think he's advocating for using the buckthorn blaster. I
Yeah,
think
Oh,
he's
yeah.
looking more for, that time of year, there's that green haze.
Oh, yeah,
You
yes,
can
you
go
can
out and
see it.
just pull it and cut it, and they're talking about covering it with plastic.
Yeah.
But anyway,
for honeysuckle purposes.
and there's, we have invasives that time of year is garlic mustard.
Garlic mustard, a lot of that, yeah.
Poison
Cool.
parsnip, so there's invasives all year, right?
Yeah,
You
right,
can
that's
pick.
true.
So, but sorry, yeah.
Oh, this guy's offering to buy creamies for his
I
volunteers.
saw that.
Jeez.
That's why we're not getting
Jericho has
volunteers.
that creamy stand right in Jericho, maple creamies.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That was a good one. Is that Palmer's?
But I think it is, it's a great idea to get
For awareness purposes.
awareness
Yeah.
purposes. It's just, and you can have it any time of the year, really, but.
Yeah, so I guess, I understand that, for buckthorn management in particular, the fall is better, but I think the advantage of having it in the spring is if you raise awareness in the spring, then people have that and carry it
Oh,
through
they
the whole
can think about
summer.
it, yeah.
Right.
That's true.
That's
Yeah.
true.
You can still have education on fall invasive management recommendations. Okay.
And you could, you don't have to use the buckthorn blaster, a lot
Of
of
course
people don't.
not, yeah.
So they choose to use other bracketing plastic and things, but
I would support the Conservation Commission signing on to this with information about how it would be beneficial for Williston.
we've got plenty of invasives, right, Laura?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay, so let's see, we do need a motion for that. Does anybody want to talk about it more before we move on, or?
My question is, who would put together the little write-up from our behalf? Do we have to put together a template, or can we just sign?
I thought there was a template.
There is a
Oh, there is,
template.
yeah.
I mean, there's a template, but I think we should probably, I think strong, I always think these things are stronger if you say
Give some
what you
context.
think, rather than
Just signing
Some
on
pro
some
forma.
form letter.
letter.
So my question would be, who is going to fill in the blanks?
I can fill in the blanks.
Okay,
Great,
Yeah.
so
thank you, Laura.
I would move that Laura, with support from Simon, complete a template in support of the Vermont Invasive Species Day and submit it.
Second.
You gonna second it? Okay.
All right, we got a second. I'm sorry. I couldn't do that.
I was just gonna call for a second. I was trying to think of, all right. All right, any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
I-
Hi,
Thank you. I think that was everybody. Anybody want to change their aye to a no? Anyone want to abstain? All right, there we have it. Thanks, everyone. That was easy.
Thank you, Laura.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're
Thank you,
in the
Laura.
know, too.
Yeah, that should be pretty quick.
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, caring for canopies grants.
So Kim, Gary and I submitted the grant to get some support. I think twofold. Doing a tree survey in the spring, which didn't really need much financial support. We're going to do it for volunteers, but following up with sort of a contracting arborist to help us do education outreach to HOAs on how to care for trees. We didn't get that grant, unfortunately. I think they were quite oversubscribed this year. They got $62,000 worth of requests for $30,000 worth of money. They are getting a load more money from federal and state sources. So that's 250 for this grant we applied for, and 500 for planting in downtowns and village centres.
250,000 and 500,000?
Yeah,
Wow,
So
that is a
500
lot more money.
yeah, 500,000 planting in these areas. I think we're probably, speaking with Kim and Gary, we're going to plough on with the tree survey in the spring regardless. So we'll probably start planning that shortly, just to update what we have and include areas like the Hamlet and like Chatham Woods, and I think
Newer
maybe
developments, yeah.
like maybe even Bittersweet's not in it for some unknown reason. To update all that, and at least we've got a baseline we can work from there. And I sort of feel like we shouldn't have any problem identifying street trees because there can only be one of so many
Green ash.
species. Yeah. So that's where we are. Bruce also submitted his letter for a different grant at the same time. He was going for the replanting. As everyone knows, trees in Maple Tree Place got taken down. So this grant is that he got, and he was successful, is to replant in Maple Tree Place.
Good.
I think he got 2/3 of what he asked for.
It's been looking a little sad.
Yeah.
Mm.
So he got 2/3 of what he asked for. So I think he's going to be prioritising that over the coming year to get those trees replanted in Maple Tree Place. I know, being part of the Brenham Woods Front Porch Forum, which is the best forum. It's so like that's what Front Porch Forum is all about, from my view. But they've started removing some ash trees in that neighbourhood. So I think that might be next on his list of getting grants for replanting there.
Does the town own the trees? And I know you just mentioned. that
I think-
some do, some don't.
Yeah, it
Yeah, the
owns
right
the
of way.
ones in the right of way.
Oh,
So it's like,
33 feet on each side.
right, however, depending on the type of road, how wide it is.
Yeah.
Any road that the town owns, basically.
Yeah.
All right, well, good to hear that he got that grant.
And that there's more funds coming, so after this initial re-inventorying, if we're still looking for funds for contracted arborist services to like maintain the trees, do outreach, things like that, are we thinking we'll reapply when new funds are available?
Yeah.
Just for the revised submission?
All right, awesome. And then the Winooski NRCD rain barrels.
So this is something that Christine's leading with the WRCD. They're just talking about an outreach day. It's looking like it's going to be one day in April for a rain barrel workshop. I think it'll be community focused, so presentation on the importance of controlling stormwater runoff, and then I think they'll have a number of barrels for people to assemble and or paint. And I think, and this is part of Christine's, she has to, as part of her permit requirements for the MS4 permit we have, she has to do a certain amount of education and outreach events. So this would form part of that. But just, we'll probably be seeking maybe someone from the Conservation Commission to come along and attend that. I went out on a limb and said you weren't interested in one solely for the Conservation Commission. And come and do the community one if anyone's interested. So sometime in April, I think that will happen.
In April, okay, well, odds are Winooski NRCD is doing that with Lake Champlain Basin Program money, so if, when that date is set, let me know and maybe I can attend.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that
Wear
too.
2 hats.
David says he's interested.
Great, yeah.
All right, excellent, David, thank you. All right, that was all on our list. Chapin, what was it that you wanted to bring up?
Sure. There's an artist who is also a professor at St. Mike's, both in ecology and art, and his name is Brian Collier, and he has started doing installations of sculptures, which are actually invasive plant root systems suspended in a structure, and they're color coded as to what's happening in that area. And he has donated one to the Tree Island project, and it's been installed. And it's green because of the good ecological things that are happening there. But I would like to recognize him, and I'm talking with, oh yeah, there's some pictures. The left is the one that he's put at Tree Island, and the right shows a variety of them. So, and there's a QR code on the frame that takes you to more information. So it's an educational thing as well as art, if you will. But I'd like to acknowledge him. And I've been talking to the school administration about maybe doing something connected to Arbor Day and inviting the parents of the 4 classes of kindergartners who spend daily time out at Tree Island to come. And so it's sort of an outreach for the whole Tree Island project, as well as recognizing his donation of that piece of artwork. And I thought maybe a conservation commissioner or Simon or both might want to attend that. So I just wanted to let you know I'm working on that and hoping you would participate. It also mentioned, it relates to another thing, which is it probably would be helpful. Tree Island isn't to the point where it should become an official country park, but when we apply for grants related to it and to talk about events like this, it might be good if it were recognized on your website as a conceptual future country park, so that it can be officially referred to, and so that we can do some outreach through your website, because I've been communicating all these volunteer hours that have been going in have been from neighbors, from school people, and from Sustainable Williston. And I've had other people come to me and say, how do I find out more? Because I want to volunteer to help. And we don't have a website or something to send them to. So I wonder if it would be best to sort of have a pre-recognition on by the Conservation Commission and on your website, so that there's somewhere people can go to get information about Tree Island, such as this event.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, can you pull up, Simon, the town website? I'm trying to remember where the Jacob Krantz parcel is listed, because it's in that same category of, it's not a country park today, but it's a concept. And I thought the two kind of belonged in the same category under like park concepts or something, so that people could see what's coming, but is not yet. Yeah. Oh, it's under protected open space. Okay.
And I think, so that's a great idea, Chapin. I can't recall, I think there is a process somehow, somewhere within the town governance that says how we create a new country park. You know, we would have to eventually create a management plan for the park and stuff like that.
Exactly. I just feel we're not quite there yet, but we are needing to do some communication.
Yeah, but that certainly seems like a great idea, and one we could explore further. I just can't recall what the process is to create a new country park, especially if it's already, this is on School
Yes.
land?
It's 100% town land.
Oh, perfect. Even better, even easier.
Yeah.
We don't need to acquire anything.
Well, actually, the plan covers some of V-Trans land for the Cirque Highway, but yeah.
Okay.
If you click on natural resources, Simon, what are the options there? Protected open space, trails. It could go under conservation initiatives. Although this seems to be a little bit more about like concept and prioritization and stuff is what we've put here.
I think that might be a better place for it to go. Because it is a fairly fluid thing at the moment.
You like the idea of it under conservation
Yeah, I think so,
initiatives?
'cause I think that
Yeah.
feels like more what it is.
It's not
to me.
necessarily protected open space right now. It is town-owned land, but we don't have like a
Yeah.
conservation easement or things like that.
There is a covenant though, because it was given to the town in exchange, the whole Mahan farm was in exchange for Maple Tree Place by the developer. And so there are restrictions.
So it was transfer of development rights related, is that possible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's an idea. What if it was under conservation initiatives, but there was a link from the open space, protected open space that took you there as well?
Yeah, the map shows Bulldog Plumbing and Heating. That's really weird. By the way, it's great. That map you have up, you can see 2 white squares. Those are places that we are mulching the herbaceous growth in for future plantings.
Yeah, those are tarps, killing invasives.
Silage type things.
Yeah. That's a really cool view of it, actually,
it is.
using the Google Earth.
But you can
It
really
is.
see how steep the banks are.
Yes.
for the-
You can see the bank, yeah, the steep banks on the right are where we're trying to protect from beavers right now. And you can also see the height at the top of it, which is where I'd like to do the observation platform. And you can see Southridge in the distance. Top right.
What's the difference between a country park and a conservation area?
Mud Pond is a good example.
Yeah, I mean, Mud Pond, Five Tree Hill.
I think it's the types of uses that are allowed.
Yeah.
I have to go back and look. It's been a long time since
Given that this is already used, and you can even see on that view right there, places where people walk. The neighborhood people already, has de facto trails. And so I view it as being a working forest that it'll have passive recreation throughout it with trails and signage. And to me, that's the country park part.
So, yeah, I mean, I think I agree that the conservation area is much more conservation focused. I'm not sure if Brownell Mountain is technically a conservation area. That doesn't have any formal public access, whereas somewhere like Mud Pond has passive recreation, and then the country park is a different focus. So that sort of illustrates the difference to me.
All right, well, happy to look into that further, Chapin. Thanks for bringing that up. So we have next meeting, February 15th, Winston Valley Park District. Nick will be in here. Is he coming in? Do you know, Simon, or?
I just arranged today. I don't know if he's coming in. I don't know where he lives.
Okay,
In the past, he's come physically in to give his updates.
okay. I will be right now anyway. I'm planning to come in here in person that day. We'll see how the world is turning.
Speaking of which, while I was on this meeting, I got a note from my boss saying he just got diagnosed with COVID, and we had a big company-wide group meeting on Monday.
Awesome.
And I'm like, what? But I bet you guys are glad I didn't come in.
That's right.
Yeah, it's really going around.
Yeah, so, and then March 1st is school break week. I will be in DC and not able to participate at all, most likely.
Same.
So I don't know what you're up to.
I'm available.
Okay.
I'm here then.
So
if that affects Kim.
I'm not gonna be here.
So you won't be here?
now.
So we may not, I don't know what, so that leaves, who's just Gary?
Gary, me, Kim, Laura, if Kim can do it.
Yeah, we'll see. I tried to lure Kim in with scones and she didn't even zoom in today, so I don't know, we'll see, I have to harass her.
She
But
said she had a 10-year thing yesterday, so maybe she was out.
She's
she's celebrating.
She's not
Oh,
celebrating.
great,
Yeah.
she is, yeah. I remember her saying that.
Then the car wouldn't start.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's, I don't know, we should connect on that on February 15th, but if there's nothing
Yeah,
critical, then maybe we skip that meeting. If we don't have quorum.
yeah.
Sounds fair.
Okay, so then.
Do we need a breakfast provider for February 15th?
I think
Snacks
I think we may, yes, we,
I'm not
so,
here then.
I can do it.
I'm not here.
Okay, so I can
Yeah.
do it.
Okay, you want to do the next one, Terry? Okay.
all right, and then Simon, we can work on other agenda items for February 15th.
Yeah.
In the next week or so,
I
okay.
can pretty much guarantee if there's food, I will be here in person.
Oh, I better bake something.
It's among my favorite things.
So do we
All
have
right.
just a minute could I just talk about the Catamount Community
Oh,
Forest
sure.
for a second? Just
Yep.
a minute. So this past Friday, is this okay to?
Yeah, as long as we don't go into too much detail. I think
Yeah,
probably,
no, so we just went to, a group of us met over at Catamount Community Forest and looked at the trees that were marked for cutting, for harvesting. And it was great. I thought it went really well. It was the board of the Outdoor Center and Simon, myself, and Hans. And we looked, they had tagged a few trees out there that they really would like to see stay. So, I mean, it was great because we all got to understand different perspectives of the forest and why some trees would really be better to stay and why some were good to remove because of grooming and things. But it was I thought, a successful day. And-
Yeah, it was great. So we had a good walk around. We looked at trees. The Outdoor Family Centre, like key perspectives were, I think basically like some of the trees that Ethan had marked the sort of inside of a turn, which if you're on your mountain bike, that's part of like the atmosphere, and it's also a good marker that there's a turn coming up, and it also stops people cutting the turn. So that's primarily what it was. So some of the wider trails, we'd have one every 400 feet or so. There was one trail whose name I can't remember. There was a very sort of skinny trail where I think there was about 10 trees that they wanted to keep. But walking through with Ethan, I think Ethan was okay with this because pretty much every tree that they wanted to keep, there would be another one nearby or another two that we could take down.
You can still get that thinning effect even without.
Yeah, so
Open canopy. You talked a lot about open canopy.
yeah, so I was talking to Ethan about this because it's like, he was telling me that I was saying this is as much an art as it is a science, and he said that's basically how you describe silviculture. That it's not just like getting the canopy gaps is important, but also selecting trees. Like he'll be walking around and thinking, oh, I haven't saved a red maple in ages. I need to save some red maples. Things like that. Or, I need to save some old trees. There's a whole range of different things that he has to think about when he's going around selecting which trees to cut. It was interesting.
Yeah, it was really, I think, and Ethan, and it was good to kind of talk about the project as a whole and why, this was all happening for the climate change adaptive thing. So I think it was good to get everybody on the same page. And I think everybody looked at it a little bit different as we moved on and marked and unmarked trees. So, and then on the walk, Ethan pointed out a couple of barberries that he had gone over. I think was Chapin met up with him, and they treated a whole bunch of barberries. It was a lot, so that was good to see. He's pretty sure that they're dead.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so he's working on that too.
Cool,
Yep.
Thanks for the update.
all right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was good. So I went there skiing yesterday and it was pretty nice.
I bet it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, yesterday was the day to get out.
It was beautiful.
It was nice. So.
Go tomorrow. It'll be nice.
Nobody will be there.
Yeah, it's true.
Place yourself.
All right, anything else for today? We have 4 minutes.
I gotta run. Have a great week. See you guys soon.
Thanks, David, you
I hope you
too.
stay Healthy.
Yeah, me too, me too.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, we lost Jacob's guy.
I was actually
Cool.
supposed to go get my Lyme vaccine shot. I'm in this
Oh,
trial,
yeah.
but they put the whole thing on hold. I looked at this,
Bad.
voicemail that somebody had left.
Yeah, that's a vaccine